Hello, everyone. Hello, Jenny.
Hi, Laurie.
So today we're here to talk about the Leo new moon. And before we get into that, let me just introduce myself. I'm Laurie from Astrology, and this is Jenny of Hidden Path Astrology. Please follow us both on our individual websites and social media. And here on YouTube, we kind of do this combined thing, and we call ourselves Astropath. So please like our videos, comment on our videos, share, and subscribe. And with that being said, now let's talk about the new moon. And I'm going to let you talk about the cycles themselves, Jenny.
Sounds great. So the new moon is on July 28th. It's going to be at 5 degrees of Leo. So we're pretty early on in Leo season. And it's going to be at 1:55 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So start with that. So at the new moon, we're talking about the very beginning of our moon cycle. This is the beginning of our lunar cycle. It's when the sun and the moon are together in the sky and you can't see the moon at all. It's invisible because it's, hidden by the bright light of the sun. So this is the beginning of the season and refers to, or the beginning of the cycle, and refers to, I kind of think of it as like the seed being planted in the soil. And Laurie and I talk a lot about the plant analogy because it's really helpful. And so this is the very beginning. So it's a great time to just think about what seed you want to plant that is kind of tied into Leo energies of confidence and radiance and enthusiasm. And a week later, it'll be a half moon. We'll have our first quarter square. When it's growing in light, it's starting to get brighter and brighter in the sky. And then another week goes by and we have the full moon, which is kind of like the flower blooming, is that part of the cycle. And then from there, it starts to wane. We get into that space where it starts to release light. And now you're thinking more about the meaning of things and letting go and what do you need to do for the next cycle. And we reach that last quarter square a week later, and then it comes all the way back around to the new moon. So it's a neat and tidy little 4-week thing to think about.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like the cycle of everything.
And yeah, I think you are correct. It kind of is. It's what happens.
It's like everything in life starts at a certain point, grows into its full expression, and then breaks down. It's the cycle of everything. And you can, for those of you who are studying astrology, really understanding that this exact same cycle happens with every pair of planets. It doesn't matter what pair of planets you're thinking about. There is a beginning of the cycle when the two come together, and then it grows and goes through the same process. So it's something to think about. And so the full illumination of this moment, this planting of this Leo new moon seed, that full illumination will happen at the full moon, correct?
That is correct. And that's going to be August 11th. We will have the full moon. And at that full moon, the sun will be in Leo and the moon will be in Aquarius, the exact opposite sign. So that's the short cycle that Laurie and I always end up talking about, like that really quick, kind of the month long, where you maybe want to move things along quickly. But there's also a longer cycle that you can use throughout the whole year. And that the full moon for that is February 5th, when the full moon is in Leo. So it kind of pertains to this new moon, and then you have that full moon. So that's another way to think about it. Like whatever happens now is going to impact you throughout the year, but 6 months later, you'll really see the culmination of your efforts at that full moon. So pick and choose. You can use both. You can experiment, but that's hopefully that's helpful. So
I think it's really helpful to think of that longer cycle, and every month. I think that's one of the great ways to really think about the full moon is look back 6 months. What was the new moon that began the process that is then illuminating into the full moon? So this upcoming full moon on August 11th will be the culmination of what we plant here at the Leo new moon, and it will also pertain back 6 months to the new moon in Aquarius, right? Which would have been last February. So really thinking cyclically really helps in so many ways. In everything.
Really does.
It's really interesting that we're sort of taught that life is this linear thing. And the more you really work with astrology and see and understand cycles, you realize that there's nothing very linear going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just like what we're talking about, the new moon, and it's the beginning, but you also have to remember it's the end of the previous cycle. And that's something, you know, we like to focus on the bright, shiny new, like, oh, it's exciting, because it is exciting to have something with such potential and it's the beginning. And but it also like closing things down well and ending is also important. And sometimes we talk about those with eclipses and things like that. And we choose to kind of focus on the real beginning with this new moon. But yeah, so I guess you want to talk about Leo a brief moment?
Oh
before
yeah,
we
let's
launch
talk
in?
about Leo. Let's
Leo.
talk about Leo. Yay, the sun is shining.
I know.
It's warm, and Leo is really about expression. I think as much as anything, Leo is about generosity and expression. You think of it as it is the sign that is ruled by the sun. The sun is the center of our world. And if the sun isn't shining, then we would be in trouble, right? If the sun went dark, we'd be in trouble. So the sun shines its generosity continually. And that's really what Leo is about. It's about fun and playfulness and generosity and expression.
Yeah, and I agree with all those things. Absolutely. Leo is a very vivacious time of year. And I also think it, because of what we're talking about, it means just being fully present to all that, like showing up and participating and being joyful in what you're doing with your life right now. And I think that that's really important. And I kind of feeling that appreciation for what's happening, no matter, even if there's difficult things happening, there's always things that you can be like, gosh, I'm so grateful for that. And I think that Leo kind of helps us see that. And Leo kind of gets that bad rap, doesn't it, Laurie? Gets that rap for being egotistical and arrogant and yay, it's all about me. And I really just feel like that is Leo when it's out of balance, because truly when Leo's living in its most joyful moment, it's shining a light on everybody else. And it ends up not being about you and your small ego, but really eliciting and joyful things from other people and helping them bring their life forwards too. And that's really what it's about on a deeper level.
Yeah, I think,
too.
that whole, like you said, it's about whether, it's about the issue of balance. And, the negative side of Leo, when you think about the arrogance and all of that, it's just insecurity. There is a real insecurity in Leo. I remember an astrologer that I think the very first time I saw an astrologer when I was very young, and it was a very old woman. And I remember her telling me that the secret with Leo is that there's kind of this inner fear that they don't exist. So they have to kind of express in a big way to get that attention.
I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because Leo can be so sensitive. It's not thought of as being sensitive, but it's a very sensitive sign. It really needs that. It needs that light shining on it.
Yeah, I think I was thinking back to, I remember you kind of told me about Noel Till all those years ago. And I remember that you were kind of sharing with me that he talked about it as recognition, and the Leo being tied to recognition. And it shouldn't be recognition like I need a royal red carpet rolled out before me. It's more about acknowledgement, and that each of us do need just to be acknowledged as human beings. And I think that that's kind of what I've interpreted that to mean, like this recognition piece. And so,
being seen for the fully authentic warmth that shines out through the sun of Leo.
Yeah. Nice. All right. I think that's great.
Leo's good stuff.
Yeah,
we like Leo.
Yeah. Let's how about if I pop the chart up real quick just so we can look at what we're looking at, and then we'll so let me just get that up. This is the chart of the moment of the new moon.
And for those of you who watched our video about the Leo season, you can see all the components we talked about in this chart, right? There's a lot going on. This is a pretty intense month. Yeah,
it has been. So basically, let's just draw our attention to the top here. up to, let's see, we've got the sun and the moon together in Leo. So there's the actual new moon right together at 5 degrees, 39 minutes of Leo. And the biggest aspect this makes is really just this really nice trine to Jupiter.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it's doing, right? So
Yeah.
what does that mean?
That is a gift of expansiveness, generosity. I mean, this really, this is heated up and really just pouring that generosity and expansion out into the world. That's a beautiful aspect. And with all the difficulties through this Leo season this year, this is the gift, and this is the piece to really notice, especially right as you're beginning, you know, as you're thinking about planting the seed of the new moon. Yeah, there's all these other difficulties around here, but you know what? Let's focus on this. When we're thinking about planting the seed, you know, okay, there's other stuff going on, but let's focus on planting this joyful seed of generosity.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember reading a little bit, like, this is kind of the king of aspects. Like Sun trine Jupiter is kind of considered the best aspect you could possibly have in your natal chart. And the reason is they're so resonant. I mean, Jupiter has a king-like aspect to it. The Sun has a king-like aspect to it. This idea of regal stature, of benevolence, of really being able to lead and rule in like a really positive way. It just really brings that forward. And the other thing I just want to note here is a little bit later in the day, Jupiter is actually going to turn retrograde.
That same day, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same day. It's a couple hours later. And I bring it up because this Jupiter has been at 8 degrees of Aries for quite some time. I was writing this down, and it's just in there for a long, long time. I think it's let me see if I can find that. I'm not quite sure I put that, but anyway, it's just at this 8 degrees, and it really kind of enhances the fact that it's in this trine aspect of the sun and the moon in this chart. So it's a very powerful Jupiter, more than usual. It's just very, very concentrated 8 degrees of Aries. So if anyone who has 8 degrees in a fire sign or close to it, this is really going to impact you on a personal level. So it's extra potent.
Wow. Yep. I like that.
Yeah.
I've got planets at 8 degrees.
I know. I was like, I think I know somebody.
Yeah, that's really lovely. Yeah. That's lovely.
Yeah. And just to add, I mean, so Aries is really this kind of selfhood piece. So the Aries and Jupiter work really, really well together. So it is something about as you kind of contend with the things that kind of make you that are really positive and energetic. That's really going to feed into all of this as well. So it's an extra potent little new moon, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And there's something in it that it is very much about taking care of the self. You know, it makes me think about the whole issue on airplanes. I say, you know, give yourself the air first before you give it to your companions. And, you know, you expand your own self, and that light and that warmth goes out to others. And I think there is an element in this new moon, in this beginning process of take care of yourself. You know, open up this generosity toward yourself. It'll spill over onto others. You don't have to think of it as I'm being selfish. It's like, no, you're building yourself in order to bring that out into the world.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just as you're saying, Laurie, I mean, as you light up, you're going to help other people do the same. And that's the idea.
Exactly.
And it's pretty cool. I really like thinking of it that way.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of the heart of it. I mean, there's a couple other aspects. Do you want to bring up any of the other kind of things that are going on in this chart?
I mean, there's difficult things going on. I think if you want to really look at some of the challenging aspects, you can look at that. There is some difficulty here. And if you really want to dig in and understand that a little bit better, I'd really encourage you to go back and listen to the video we made of Leo season.
Yeah.
Because that'll kind of give you more context for that. Do you want to say anything else about it?
I mean, yeah, like you're
You
saying,
know?
we could speak volumes about this one
Right.
aspect, but I mean, maybe just the quick thing I'd say is Uranus to Mercury in a square, it's going to put some stress on you in terms of where do you need to wake up? Like, where do you need to elevate your mindset? Where do you need to kind of wake up to something brand new? And it might be uncomfortable. It might
Mhm.
bring anxiety. It might bring, I mean, it's kind of like it could be exciting, but it could also provoke anxiety. So I think about this in terms of like when I'm getting ready to travel, you know, and I'm always like a little anxious about, oh God, I got to get on the plane and deal with the airport, blah, 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 blah. But I'm super excited to go somewhere new and have my mind like broadly opened by some new place. So it's kind of that sort of tension.
Yeah,
So that's it.
Uranus brings in that double-sided anxiety versus excitement always with Uranus. And I think oftentimes we can make a choice. Okay, I feel so anxious. Well, find the excitement because it's under there. It's
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And
Yeah.
the fact that Mars is right in there, that can bring in
Yeah.
some heat and difficulty as
Yeah,
well. But
circle that.
yeah.
Yeah. Just
Listen.
briefly, just so you know, there's this
Yeah.
volatility in this that's coming your way,
Yeah.
that's in
So
the
yeah,
air, so to speak.
if you listen to the video we did on the Leo season, you can go to each individual rising sign and listen to exactly where that shows up in your own chart and how to work with that. So
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. I think, is there anything else you want to add, or I think you're ready
I
to
don't
dive
think
into those
so.
personal things?
I
Okay.
think we can dive right into those personal things. If you want to
Okay.
turn that one off, I think I've got the
All right.
other. Let me open this up. Okay, so here in these charts, what I've got is where the sun and moon, the new moon is, and where, oh, it's okay. I didn't quite prepare this the way I thought I had, but that's okay. Excuse me, I didn't say any of that.
Looks
So
great.
the thing that we're looking at right now is for those of you who were born with Aries rising, the new moon itself is falling in your 5th house. And where, if you've got Aries rising, Leo holds that space of your 5th house always. This is wherever Leo is a super important part to everyone's chart because it's where you are most self-expressed with your own sun. Your sun doesn't have to be in Leo. Wherever your sun is, it's going to be shining through in that 5th house. And at this period in time, when you're planting a seed, you want to think about planting a seed of whatever, generosity, pleasure in that area of creativity, where you give of yourself. That's what the 5th house is about.
That's right. I mean, so this might be in terms of concrete things for those of you with Aries rising, this might be being really generous and playful with your children. I mean, those are all Leo things. So having that playful attitude, but also like Laurie's saying, being willing to be creative and really maximizing creativity here, and maximizing how you give love, right? That's what I love, how you talk about that with the 5th house. This is you shining out with your unconditional love for others. So
whether that be people or your creative process. So you're planting a seed of learning how to love bigger. You can think of it just as simply as that. And then the gift comes from how you feel about yourself right now. This is such a beautiful thing. So you've got this expansive understanding of your own strength, and you can just pour that energy right into learning how to love others or give to create your own creativity.
Yeah. And that 1st house, I mean, it pertains to your, like, just like you're saying, Laurie, like your self-image. So what a great opportunity to maybe think a little bit about yourself as a benevolent force, you can kind of see what that image is going to be like. Just dust that off, shine it up.
Dust that off, shine it up, and allow that to really flow into this new creative project or this new way of giving of yourself. Okay. And you want to move on to the next one?
Well, I think we pretty well covered it. I think it's pretty good.
Okay. So if you've got Taurus rising, let's think about that. And first, let's make those lines go away. There we go. Okay. So if you have Taurus rising, where's that falling for you, Jenny?
That is falling in your family life, something to do with your
Mm.
fourth house. The fourth house is the most private house in the chart. It pertains to your family life. It might pertain to your lineage and your ancestry.
Mm.
And so this is an opportunity to really be joyful about this part of your life, bring more joy into your family life, or feel a sense of celebration or gratitude or appreciation from where you came from, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I think about.
Yeah.
And then you got to think about, oh, go ahead, Lori. Do you want to add to that?
No, I was just looking at this and thinking about the combination with the Jupiter up there in the 12th. And I just had this image of planting a seed to, really dig into your lineage and do some work with your ancestor, understanding your ancestry line. And where does that flow from? It flows from your, kind of your unconscious understanding of where you came from, who you are, and allowing that to flow into this new project toward around understanding family and home.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because I always think it's funny having these fiery signs on the 4th and the 12th house, because those are houses that they're kind of hard to get to. They're less conscious than some of the other places in the chart. So it does require a bit more delving in, a bit more digging deep, and a further understanding of that. What's that Jupiter and Aries trying to show you right now in your 12th house? What is it trying to help you see about yourself and your lineage? And I think that it's interesting to have this fire in those places.
Yeah, I like that. It's like some fiery, expansive understanding deep in your unconscious that is supporting you growing more generosity and warmth in your home and family.
Yeah.
Really as simple as that, I think. So go out there and do it. Go out there and do it, right?
So simple.
Okay, so simple. Now, if you have Gemini rising, this new moon is falling there in your 3rd house. And, in the 3rd house, okay, the 3rd house is really about your day-to-day thought processes, how, your environment, how you function in your day-to-day thought processes is really how I think of it. Siblings often hold a space there, neighbor relationships. If you're thinking about relationships, it's sort of siblings, neighbors, those people that you encounter day to day, but you might not have chosen. I think of that with that. So there's some way of bringing generosity into your communication in those type of relationships, possibly, that you can work on that. It can just be communication too. It can be as simple as that.
Well, I was thinking as you're talking, Laura, it's interesting because Gemini rising is somebody very concerned about communication to start with. And then that also means that with Leo in that 3rd house kind of really underscores how important communication is, because it means that their sun, wherever their sun is in their chart, is responsible for how they communicate. And that's what this is highlighting. And then you throw that Jupiter in the 11th house, yet another house concerned with connecting and unifying through ideas and, talking with people and galvanizing people. That's what's happening here. It's really interesting. So this is a great opportunity with somebody with Gemini rising to get things going, some community project or something, like you're saying, something with your neighbors or acquaintances, or, something to do even with a school. I mean, those are all things that you could have a huge impact on your community.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're kind of using this expansiveness within the community space to support planting the seed in that 3rd house. Yeah, I like that you said that about like a school or some way. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, well, you're also reminding me, because schools are the beating heart of communities. So it seems to me there might be a link between those things in this case. So
and the 3rd house is always thought of as early education. So this would not be pertaining to university type schooling.
Right.
But so that's interesting. And that's the thing you said too about no matter where your sun is, The sun rules the third house if you have Gemini rising.
Mhm.
So the third house is, you know, your communication is so key to you, regardless of
Mhm.
where your own sun is.
Mhm.
And this is giving you an opportunity at this Leo new moon to plant a seed to increase how your communication works.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
great.
Okay.
Love the patterns.
I do too. They're wonderful. Okay, so let's go on to those of you who have Cancer rising. This is putting the new moon into your second house.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the second house is your finances. It's yours, how
Hmm.
you feel about yourself, your values, your self-worth. You know, what do you value? So anybody with Cancer
Mm.
rising, values are going to be something that are of prime importance. And then when you add in that Jupiter in Aries there, you're making a connection between your finances and your profession, because that 10th house where Jupiter is your profession. So there's a link between your livelihood, how you're going to make your money, to what your vocation is. And this is a great opportunity
Right.
to plant a seed to do with the worth and the values and how you want to shift that. That will also help your profession along as you have Jupiter there.
Right. Yeah, there's
Mhm.
some way in which, with Jupiter here going through your 10th house, if you've got Cancer rising, you know, your vocation, however you want to think about that 10th
Mhm.
house, career, it's also your reputation. I mean, not everybody has a career.
Right.
So
It's where how you show up.
it's
Yep.
how you show up in the
Mhm.
greater world. People who don't necessarily know you very personally, they know about you. It's the 10th house that they know about. So
Mhm.
there's some way that
Mm.
there is a direct line from that feeding this need right now at the new moon to plant a seed to grow your self-worth or grow your paycheck,
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and wherever Leo is such an important place, regardless of where your sun is in your chart. That second house, wherever Leo is where that sun has to kind of shine through there.
Yeah.
So it's always an
Mhm.
important area, and
Yeah.
an important area. I've always thought of it as, you know, wherever the sun, whatever house the sun rules, whatever house holds Leo, is where you can be most true to yourself.
Mm.
You can be
Mhm.
most yourself there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. I like how you said that. And the other piece I want to fold in here is with Cancer rising, you're going to have some sensitivities. So just because
Mm.
you're, that's just what that means. You have
Mhm.
Cancer rising. So it is extra important to tune into how you value yourself, you know,
Right.
especially living in a culture that does not treat women the best. And we're seeing all sorts of attacks on our liberties and
Right.
so on and so forth right now.
Right.
So right now,
Right.
especially a time to really work on that piece, that self-worth.
That's
Very
so
important.
interesting that you brought that up. And this, I don't know. I'm just thinking about, you know, Cancer there rising,
Mm-hmm.
mothering, all the political stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Mm-hmm.
valuing the self.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we got to
that's,
stand up for ourselves, right?
yeah, I could
Yeah.
definitely spin that conversation and go on and on, but
Well, we got 8 more signs to go, so we still.
right. Okay. Are we ready to go on to Leo rising?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So now for those of you who have Leo rising, clearly this new moon is falling right in your first house.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, this is really about planting a seed to be more truly your most shining, authentic, generous, warm self.
Mm-hmm.
You're really planting that seed. That's
Mm-hmm.
the first house is just self. It's how you express yourself. It's how you show up in the world. It's what people see when they meet you. And with Leo on that line, wherever Leo is such an important part because it's where the sun shines. So regardless of what sign your sun is in, your sun impacts that first house always.
Mm-hmm. You got it.
Okay, so the other piece is that is being impacted and supported, and there's a gift coming from the area of your mindset, your worldview.
Mhm.
So there's some heat in your worldview that is, really supporting you in showing up. Yeah, this is not a time to, close the curtains and go to bed.
Yeah.
You really need to get out there and shine your understanding of the world.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, that's great. I love that.
So cool.
I was just going to add in sometimes that you may not know that you have Leo rising, and I mean, you may or you may not, but at any rate, what that information that gives you is that no matter what you feel about yourself, other people see you in this radiant view because they feel that Leo, recognition and the joyfulness and the generosity that's available, even if you don't realize that's how you are, like you may or may not, but other people are going to perceive you that way. And that's and if that's true, then it's like, it's time to embrace that. It's time to say, all right. And to realize how important that desire or that fuel for, I don't know, just recognition and appreciation and those things are showing up. And then, that's what I was coming to mind.
I think it's so important with this new moon falling right there in your first house. Don't be shy. Just don't be shy. Go out there and express yourself and plant a seed to express yourself more and more over the next 6 months.
Yeah. And like you said, with the Jupiter up there in that 9th house, is just supporting and giving you the tools that you need. It's giving you, it might be, if you are, I can think of a person with this kind of setup who's very introverted. And so it's use those tools that those teachers can offer you to help you understand how to just go ahead and be who you are, and not it doesn't mean you have to be it's not so much about being super extroverted. It's more about being willing to express what's really there and not shying away from it, right?
Yeah. And to express with that Jupiter being in the 9th house, to express what your beliefs are. This, with the 9th house being also about travel and education, wherever we expand ourselves, this would be a great time to do a little traveling, whether it be physical traveling or just, traveling in your understanding, really growing your understanding of the greater world, other cultures, whatever. That is going to really support your ability to show up as your most authentic self here.
Yeah. And I think with Aries in that 9th house too, like that's, you have a great amount of resource on your own. Like you yourself have the ability to really have some understanding here. So I think that's pretty cool to have that showing up. So cool. Do it.
So do it. All right. So let's move on to those of you with Virgo rising. That's going to put this new moon in your 12th house. What do you think about that, Jenny?
My goodness gracious. I can't think of anybody with this.
No, me either.
Well, wow. I mean, this is interesting. This is illuminating your connection to the collective. This is, if you have Virgo rising, this is sort of saying like, hey, there's a personal you, but that personal you is reflective of this much larger collective consciousness that's going on. I also think that anybody with Leo in the 12th house has a huge capacity to develop compassion for other people and other people's struggles and other people's, issues, particularly the way that so many of us kind of are our own worst enemies, which is so prevalent in our culture. Those of you with Virgo rising, it'll really help other people come to terms with that, to kind of deal with that. So I think that's really important. And then with Jupiter in the 8th house, this means you just have this really good way of dealing with other people's baggage. Like you have this way of navigating those boundaries of where you end and the other people begin. And that skill set is what really is supporting you and giving this extra edge to be compassionate for other people. And the two working in tandem together, I mean, it is just powerful.
Yeah, that is really powerful. So if you think about this, planting this seed in the 12th house, it's really planting a seed of developing your unconscious compassion. Does that sound right? I'm thinking about that. It's interesting with Leo
Yeah.
there in the 12th house too. And one of the things we've talked about with these is, if you've got Leo rising, it doesn't matter where your sun sign is. This is the area of your life that the sun rules. So it's such a powerful area. It's, I always think of wherever Leo is where you're most yourself.
Yeah.
So with Virgo rising, you're most yourself when you're all alone with the doors closed.
Yeah.
One of the ways I've always thought about that. It's like you're planting this seed and it's in Leo, so it's very warm and big, and yet it's kind of in a hidden spot.
Yeah, I mean, that 12th house does refer to isolation, for some folks that might mean something like prison. For other people, that's a retreat space. For others, that's just how the work you do behind the scenes that's veiled from the rest of society that still has an impact on society. And when you're asking about the connection between the unconscious and the development of compassion, it's something like it's how we all end up having to suffer through things. And there's just things in our life that we each have to suffer with. And as you deal with that suffering, as you confront it and work with it, that is what helps you understand that everybody does that and has to do that. And then you start having this compassion. Yep. And that's really, it's sort of a pathway. And this is kind of the most spiritual house. I mean, it does talk about a pathway in the dark and having to work in these really difficult places of life that are hidden. And the 8th house as well. The 8th house is also not an easy house to grapple with. So
so that's a very, very powerful connection. You are really your deepest kind of hidden areas that are, if you're doing the work in the world, it's a very, very rich area. And it's really being supported right now by other people in some way. Maybe you're going to get a huge inheritance.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely. I mean, that could be a thing, that whole shared resource idea,
Yeah. And you can think of that like, somebody's going to die and I'm going to get this huge inheritance that's connected to this new moon. But it could also be just, a gift.
Yeah. Or it could be
a little gift.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I was just going to say that it could be a shifting responsibility in where your place of work. I mean, it could be something like that you sort of inherited a new role in work because somebody moved on or something. I mean, there's very subtle ways.
It's really lovely.
That. Yeah.
I love that combination. This really, the Jupiter trining the sun and moon in that new moon phase, it's just such a lovely thing. Okay, let's move on. I think we've given plenty of attention to Virgo rising folks. Now let's move on to those with Libra rising. And this is going to put the new moon here in the 11th house. So those of you with Libra rising, the area of your life where you're going to be planting a seed, the area of your life where you shine, that holds that Leo area, is around community. Really, I think of the 11th house as where we receive love from community that supports us. So you really are thinking about beginning something new, planting a seed in that area. What is your community? Where do you get those needs met?
Yeah.
And then that, the gift is from the individual. These two, just whenever you look at the areas where trines happen, you just see the complements. An individual relationship in the 7th house, there's an expansion through individual relationships that helps support your development of community. So there's a natural fit there between those. So, look, who is in this 7th house that is helping support you to begin a community endeavor of some sort for yourself.
Yeah, and I think so much about this with the Libra rising and that fact that we're in the 11th house, we're really talking about social connections. And anybody with Libra rising, social connection and community could be the people you go and you volunteer with, but it could also be your larger group of friends and acquaintances, your allies at work. I mean, it's different people, but anybody with that Libra rising, that group setting is very important to how you operate in your life. It's something that's going to really satisfy your sun, no matter where your sun is, no matter what sign your sun is in, it's still responsible for this 11th house where Leo is. So it really brings in the importance of social connection. And then when you look at that partnership in the 7th house that you're talking about, partnership of all different kinds, just really speaking to how those things are so important to you Libra folks, just very helpful.
Yeah, that 11th house, when you think about the houses as polarities, and we always talk about the 5th house as where you give love, the 11th house is where you receive it. So, really realizing with Leo in that 11th house, the importance of being really supported, allowing yourself to really be supported. So, one of the things you might be really thinking about in this time when you're thinking about planting a seed, you're planting a seed to be loved by your community. Oh, I love that. That's sweet. That's okay. Great. Anything else?
No, I think we got it covered.
We are going to go on to those of you with Scorpio rising, and that's going to bring the sun and moon there into the 10th house.
So those of you with Scorpio rising, that 10th house is going to be very important. Your profession, what you do in your profession is going to bring you a profound sense of meaning. That's where you're going to be seeking it. Even if you're in something you're like, boy, this is not bringing me meaning, then it's a question there, but this is something that's very important. How you show up in the public life. Again, we talk about how this can be vocation or career, but not everybody has that. So it is how you show up in public, what you're being seen for. But a very important piece to really just shine the light of joy and vitality into that area, if whatever it is that you're doing. And that's being supported by that Jupiter in Aries in the 6th house. So that's your routines, your day-to-day habits, what you do to get up and then go to work, like what are the things that you're doing on the daily. So that's something to think about. And with Jupiter there, you have this wonderful opportunity to kind of breathe new life into that area of what you're doing, and that might just be subtle shifts. It doesn't have to be something major. Just what are some things you can do to bring a bit more joy into your life in that area, so it's not so rote, so it feels more authentic, and that is going to support you in that 10th in your career profession. Yeah,
I'm thinking about that, like just in practical terms, this expansion in your routine supporting your vocation. Okay, what could that be? If you feel really stuck with this new moon, maybe just change up your routines. Drive to work on a different route. I don't know.
Like maybe it's if you whatever you do for your healthcare routines, like your workouts and stuff, maybe you need to do it in the morning instead of when you get home from work, or maybe you need to I'm projecting, but go paddleboarding right after work to like cool off and calm down, like it's something like that, where you're maybe shifting for the season, the fact it's Leo season, you're really moving with the flow instead of against it, right?
Really thinking, it's kind of interesting because you think about Leo season and you think about summer and the sun is shining, everybody wants to go to the beach, and this is showing up in your 10th house, which is your vocation. So it's kind of like, with Leo in that 10th house, this is an area that is so important to you throughout your life. And at this time, something in your day-to-day routines can show up to really support you to feel great in that area.
Yeah, because you're reminding me of something, Laurie, which is just simply that, hey, guess what? Those of you with Scorpio rising, it's in a square aspect to that Leo in your 10th house. So this might be a struggle for you. This might be a place where you're like, great, all the bright, shiny people are out doing the thing, and I'm a Scorpio rising, and I'm not comfortable this time of year. So I just want to acknowledge that there might be some stress, there might be some struggle there, and that's okay. I mean, we all have our places, but the job now is just to go ahead and embrace whatever those parts of self that is represented by this Jupiter Jupiter in Aries, and how you can kind of refurbish your routines to bring
Yeah.
new joy to that area.
Yeah. Maybe you
So-
need to bring a new kitten home.
Yes.
Sixth house is definitely about your pets as well. It's about all the things that really build and support your routines for your health, your life in general. So yeah, there's some support there. That's yeah, keep your eyes open for it and plant that seed in the 10th house. Now let's move on to those of you with Sagittarius rising. So that brings the new moon for those of you with Sagittarius rising. It's going to fall here in your 9th house. Now, the 9th house is, I think of it as our worldview. It's where we expand our understanding of the world. You can think of the 9th house as travel, education, other cultures, just big ideas that expand you. So for you with Sagittarius rising, it makes perfect sense that Leo is on the 9th house. This is such an area of importance for you, regardless of where your sun is in your chart. The sun rules this area. So this is an area where you are always, there's always attention of yours there. So you're going to want to plant a seed. Planting a seed in the 9th house, that's an easy one. You can think about, maybe it's time to take a new class. Maybe it's time to plan a new travel adventure. Maybe it's time to plant a seed to understand people who are not currently understood by you, other cultural ideas. But planting a seed of bringing generosity into your understanding of the bigger world. That's the seed you want to plant. And then, the support comes from your creativity or people you give love to. You can think of that 5th house as children, love affairs, creativity. It's where you give love. So as you give love, which is really a area that is expanding right now for you anyway, as you give love, that really supports you growing this higher understanding.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I was reading a book on the houses recently, just a little book, and one of the things it talked about in the 9th house is the place where you really value critical thinking, where you think beyond whatever the culture's taught you. You think beyond the things you may have learned in primary school. You think beyond where you're living and your culture. And I just think that anybody, as you're saying, with Leo in the 9th house, it's going to be huge value for you for the pursuit of wisdom. The seeking of this higher level of open-mindedness, the embracing of people from other cultures, the open-mindedness and acceptance that comes with that. And so I picture people with Sagittarius rising as being leaders in how we need to move forwards in embracing other people and accepting their differences. And you're right, like that Jupiter in the 5th house, providing the unfettered giving of love into that, like recognizing that this is your gift that you can offer to the world. And God, we need it so badly right now. I mean, with the way things are and things being so polarized and so on and so forth, like radical acceptance for other people is just of huge value right now, a huge resource.
Giving love supports your growing expansion of your understanding. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Okay.
Great.
So let's move on to those of you with Capricorn rising. Where does this fall, Jenny?
Capricorn rising. This brings that Leo sun, the Leo focus, the new moon right there into your 8th house. So this is, I think this is planting a seed for deepening your understanding of other people's struggles, of other people's values. It could play out in a monetary sense, where there's something where you're having to deal with the way other people value money, and you're coming up against that. So this is a great opportunity to plant a new seed for working with this challenging area of life. So that might be ways that, rituals that you can use. I also like to talk about rituals here to learn how to set boundaries in a way that works. And when we say set boundaries, we mean just knowing yourself better, so that you know kind of where you end and everybody else begins, which is, those are murky waters. Those are not clear things. And especially because that 8th house is kind of on the heels of the 7th house of the intimate relationship thing. So here you're really getting into these deeper layers of other people. So this is what that new moon is about. And with the support from Jupiter in the 4th house, this is a suggestion around how somehow your family supports you in this. Somehow the work that you've had to do to stand up for yourself in your family life is going to provide you with a great resource for dealing with these other difficult things. Or actual family members who are really loving and supporting you and are rallying for you and cheerleading for you, who support you in these endeavors. So that's kind of a little snapshot of that. What do you think, Laurie?
Well, as I'm looking at it, I seem to be stuck on this thing. I brought it up with one of the others, is this inheritance. Because the 8th house also is about, it's about other people's values. It's also about shared resources. It can be about inheritance, that kind of thing. So because it brings in this expansion in the family area, maybe there's some way that family is supporting you financially as well. There could be something there, but it's definitely, it's about planting a seed of understanding deeper issues around other people. And if a family member is helping you with resources, that's not a simple thing. Because you take money from family members. It's never a simple thing. But there's really a way that is supporting your deepening understanding.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
So that's what that made me think of.
Yeah, and as you were talking to, it kind of got my mind going, as we do with each other quite a bit here. But I was thinking about anybody with Capricorn rising. I mean, that's a fairly serious, Capricorn rising, and it's interesting how these more fiery energies are falling in some kind of hard to understand places of life. That whole family stew that we grow up with and have to tease our way through, and then this whole 8th house of other people's baggage and what is it, death, sex, and taxes, like the old days. Like, I mean, these things that are not very easy to contend with, and how typical it would be that those with Capricorn rising are working to master these areas of life, because guess what Capricorn does? It wrestles with the hard stuff. And if its flaws are often around being too serious and heavy-handed, and but here you get to really shine the light in these hard places that's really hard for other people to do. So again, you're kind of this source, this beacon of light in these hard areas.
Right. That's lovely. Okay, those of you with Capricorn rising, get on it. Plant a seed for understanding other people's deeper issues.
Get beaconing.
Right. Okay. So we are going to move on now to those of you who have Aquarius rising. So if you've got Aquarius rising, this new moon is falling in your 7th house of intimate personal partnerships. People often think of the 7th house as, my spouse or my romantic relationship. And that's not entirely it. Romantic relationships actually can maintain a 5th house focus. Once you are in a really committed partnership, yes, it's a 7th house thing. But 7th house also, it really encompasses any equal kind of partnerships, any one-on-one significant partnerships. So what you're planting a seed for here is the development of more dynamic, exciting, warm generosity in those partnerships. That's really what you're planting a seed of. And the support for you comes from this expansion of your understanding how to communicate. So this is you've got an ability. If you've got Aquarius rising, you've really got an ability at this time to start some really significant conversations with a partner that's really going to make a difference over the next 2 weeks and the next 6 months, particularly.
Nice. Yeah. I really always think too, like with that whole 1st house and 7th house thing, like being Aquarius rising and having Leo in that 7th house, you're really working with that whole idea of kind of mirroring, like that you see yourself in others and others see themselves in you, and there are mirror reflections of each other. They're not quite the actual real thing, they're just, so there's a lot of learning for anyone with Leo being in charge, or your sun and through Leo being in charge of that seventh house. There's a lot of learning available to you in how you deal with partnerships. So whether you have a partner, whether you don't, the question more is a deeper layer of yourself and how you interact with people. So I think that is a primary importance. Yeah, and you're right. That third house of where Jupiter is, I mean, you have the gift of the gab. I mean, you're a person who, you're with Aquarius rising, you're probably pretty forward thinking, and you know how to talk about it. You know how to stand true in yourself and say, this is what I believe. This is what I want to share with you. And this is how I'm going to communicate. So I think that you have that natural gift, and it's really going to show up at this time.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Oh, this trine between Jupiter and this new moon is just, what a lovely gift.
It is.
What a lovely thing. And, if you're listening to this, go back and listen to our Leo season video as well. You'll learn a lot more. Okay. Are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are moving now to those of you with Pisces rising, and this puts your new moon into your 6th house.
Yes, this is kind of straightforward in a way. This is very much like plant that seed for joyful expression in your daily routines, like bring more joy to whatever it is that stuff that maybe sometimes feels like drudgery. Well, it's time to breathe new life into it. It's time to add something fun to it. Give it some sparkle. Put the disco ball up.
Get a kitten.
Yeah. This is like, I don't put the disco ball up in your kitchen so the dishes become more fun. Get your kids involved if you have them, and do something that kind of adds some zhuzh to your daily routines. I mean, this kind of varies a lot. It's how you get yourself to work. It's your exercise that you do to help your health stay on track. It's your food and nutrition, how you cook, how you eat. There's a few other things too, your other practices, if you meditate and so on. It's any of those things that you do on the daily that keep you going. And when you add in like that, and the trine to Jupiter, your major support system here for doing this is how you value yourself. You think about this in terms of like, I value myself and I am worth keeping myself healthy. That's one way to think about it. Another way to think about it is maybe you have significant financial means, and you can do something really fun, like maybe install a sauna or something, something that you can afford to do, those resources. So that's another way to think about it.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Yeah. If you've got Pisces rising, this actually just sounds lovely. If you've got Pisces rising, build a sauna outside that you can really enjoy every day, and that will really support you so much I mean, you think about Pisces rising, how much that would feel so Piscean.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, the Pisces rising, again, anybody with a water sign on that, there's a sensitivity, and it's important for you to make sure you're nourishing yourself, make sure you're rejuvenating, make sure you're kind of filling your own, drawing from your own well, like that well is flush with water and tapped and keeping you going. I mean, it's a very important thing for those water signs. So whether you've got great, resources and are going to go out and build a new sauna or, do something extravagant like that, just realizing with Jupiter moving through here that whatever resources you do have right now, put some of them into your daily routines. Oh, good point.
Whatever it is, buy yourself a new pair of running shoes, whatever it is. Get yourself a juicer, something that's going to support your health and your routines.
Oh, I like that. Because these are very tangible places, the second house and the 6th house,
very
these are tangible places. Yeah. So that's
or
great.
like I said, like I slipped in before, get yourself a kitten. I mean, it's Leo after all, a little lion.
The lion
totally disrupt your daily routines. Anyway, that's it. Right. I think that covered the Pisces, and I'm going to stop our sharing.
Yeah. All right.
And there we did it. Thank you, everyone. If anyone's still listening, thank you. And we'll do this again.
We'll see you soon. Thanks for signing up. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you, Jenny. Have a great day.
Bye.